Welcome back to the Manufacturing Come Up. I'm your host, Malachi Greb. Today we have an awesome guest from Universal Robots. They came from Bailiff. Can you guys guess who it is? It's your one and only Will Healy. How's it going, Will?
Awesome. Really glad to be here, Malachi. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you. I'm surprised it took so long to get you on the podcast as it did.
You're a busy guy. I'm a busy guy. I think trying to align the calendars is pretty tough.
Yeah, I remembered I asked, I was like, where are we at with Will? Like, because I don't handle a lot of the who's on the show, like the nuts and bolts of it. And, I'll put in a request of like, hey, I want these people here on the show. And yeah. So,
I'm terrible. I'm notoriously terrible at email. So that is definitely also my personal shame of that's not a good way to get a hold of me either. So that definitely delayed some of the delayed some as well.
So to start off this thing, can you kind of give people like a brief description of where you're at, and so that way they have an understanding of just your current position and what you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Will Healy, and I work at Universal Robots. I am the global segment leader for welding. And so what does that mean? So I'm kind of like overseeing all the things we're doing for welding, whether it's product management or marketing or sales or these things. I'm not really directly managing those people, but I'm trying to make sure we're all working together. Our mission at Universal Robots is we want to create a world where people work with robots, not like robots. And so I want to make sure that happens in welding, and it happens in welding more for welders. And so trying to align our whole company so that we're doing that as best as we can for all of our customers and all of our future customers. I've worked in manufacturing for 17 years. I definitely didn't start thinking I wanted to work in manufacturing. We can talk about that later. But I've always been in automation and manufacturing, and I sold and marketed and did product management for sensors and industrial networks and cables and connectors and all these really cool automation input devices, I guess you would say. And so I'm really excited. I've just in the last 3 months switched to Universal Robots, and now I'm working on output devices, right? The arms, the 6-axis arms that you see in all the cool videos. So
right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think Universal is a really cool spot to work and to be at. I mean, as Universal Robots is owned by a parent company, right?
Yeah, Teradyne is a publicly traded company, and Universal Robots is owned by Teradyne. UR is based in Denmark, and Teradyne's based in Boston.
Got you. Yeah, it's like Teradyne, if I'm not mistaken, they bought Mir as well, right?
Yes, yeah. So we're both part of the same kind of industrial automation group of Teradyne. So Mir Robots and I forget what it is, mobile industrial robot. I'm still new, so I'm still learning all the things. But yeah, Mir and UR are both owned by Teradyne. And Teradyne's a really well-known semiconductor testing equipment company.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really cool is like both Mir and UR, before they were really even brands under the same umbrella, I kind of still envisioned them somewhat the same, just in like the way that they marketed, the way that they kind of just came up in the industry. Both of them like kind of came up right around the same time as far as like when they were deployed into the market, all that.
Yeah. I love the space that both these companies are in. This idea of collaborative automation is kind of new, and there's other technologies in there. Most people know collaborative robots. I think a lot of people know this kind of mobile robot in the last year or two, but there's a lot of other collaborative automation out there that I think is really interesting, like light guide systems, using projection and lasers and literally like vision combined with projection to be able to kind of augment the workspace of the worker and guide the worker through. So these kind of operator guidance solutions, whether it's lights on pick bins or any way that automation is used to collaborate with the human is really cool to me. I've seen some amazing things, how drones are being used to keep workers safer and collaborate with workers. I'm sure everyone's seen that Boston Dynamics robot dog. There's a bunch of different brands of these quadruped dogs, quadruped robots that are out there doing inspections and going in confined spaces where it's really dangerous for a person. We can send a robot. There's just this entire category of automation technologies that are working with people to make the life of the worker better are really interesting to me. And I find it really exciting. And it's one of the reasons I came to UR.
Awesome. So to go back into your past, you've already had a very great career, and I think you have many more years of success and growth to come. Where did it all start?
Oh man. Yeah, so a mommy and a daddy. No, I'm just no, I mean, really, I've always kind of, I as a kid, I always loved Legos and those kinds of things. I was always a little bit of mechanically minded and liked how things work. And computers, I was very lucky. My dad, kind of as a personal hobby and interest, always thought computers were interesting. So at a very young age, this is a typical millennial story, but I'm kind of on the end of Gen X and the beginning of millennial. So I'm kind of in this weird 82 baby, if you want to age me exactly. But I had a computer in my house almost my whole life. I was always really interested in that, how you program things and what it can do and how it can do things. And so you combine all that together. And I've always kind of had this curiosity about how things work. And what's interesting is when I was a kid, my mom was a computer programmer. If you think back, like early 90s, there weren't many lady computer programmers, but she worked for a very large, well-known company that you and I likely do business with. And she was writing all the code behind the team and managing a team, writing the code to run their business, and really impressive. And so I always had this like representative of technology in my family because of my dad's interests and my mom's interests. It definitely generated that. But the reason I bring my mom up specifically is when we would ask her questions as a kid, she would never answer our questions ever. And it drove me insane as a child. Thinking back, I'm getting like hot, just getting angry thinking about how she never answered our questions. But when we asked her, Mom, how do I? She would always respond, you can figure it out. Where could you look to figure it out? How could you find this answer? She would never like answer the question. Yeah. She would answer the question with, how do you think you would do that? And at the time, like I said, when I was a kid, I hated it. I hated it so much. I avoided asking her questions sometimes because I didn't want her to make me think of it. But thinking back, it was such a great, constructive, amazing way of thinking about the world. And today, I think that way, and I'm positive it's because my mom made me think that way. So this story's getting longer and longer, but it really caused me. How can I solve it? How can I fix it? How can I do it myself? And so that was always very much ingrained in me. Just to build on that, I went to a college preparatory school. I went to an all guys Catholic military school.
Oh, wow.
All guys Catholic military school. So run all that through your head. And I used to, if you watch old Will Automate videos, my wife and I just remodeled. We're still not done. There's some shame in the corner here where I cut the carpet up and I still haven't replaced the carpet yet. So you can actually see the gap between the wall and the carpet. But I used to have a bunch of swords hanging on the wall here. And those are awards that I won in military school. And I made a whole video about it. And you can find it on LinkedIn. But I went to military school and I learned a lot in military school too about discipline and order and structure. And that really helped me. And I had a really great science and math education in that school, which is, really, really powerful. So when it was time to choose where to go to college and what to do, it was very much clearly a pipeline to college. And they were like, you like math and you like science, you should be an engineer. And I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do, Malachi. Really, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I was good at math and I was good at science. So they were like, you should be an engineer. And I was like, okay, an engineer. That sounds great.
Yeah,
I absolutely should not have been an engineer.
I think it's really good that they kind of mapped out and said, hey, like I think you should go for X degree. I mean, so like this was like high school level, right?
Yeah. In my high school, they were already kind of preparing those directions and setting up those classes. And then so when I went to college, I applied to a bunch of engineering programs. My mom was really angry. I was an Illinois State scholar. I got all these high test marks, and the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana rejected my application to engineering school. And my mom was furious. And she was the kind of person that let me do my own things. I told you, right? You solve your problems. I don't solve your problems. My mom was writing letters to senators and congressmen and all kinds of stuff. She was furious. But an Illinois State scholar got rejected by University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. To this day, she still like goes crazy about it. It's hilarious to me. But I ended up at Purdue University. Clearly, I ended up at Purdue University, a mechanical engineering program. I actually started. I really wanted to be an entertainment engineer. I got real addicted to building roller coasters, and it wasn't Roller Coaster Tycoon. Everyone knows this like amusement park game. It was like before that, just to date myself. Wish I could this game. But you could like build roller coasters and like understand the physics of a coaster. And I thought that was so cool that you could build entertainment. I always liked theater, and like the way that technology was used in theater was really interesting. And Purdue had this really cool entertainment engineering program. And so I actually went to Purdue to be an entertainment engineer.
Really?
And after the first couple of semesters, I realized that there's like 200 of these people on the planet, and it is hyper competitive, and I should probably broaden my prospects a little bit. So I took that entertainment engineering and I took it into mechanical engineering, which I'm glad I did. And I was a terrible engineer, Malachi. I was a terrible engineer. But what I was really good at was building circles. And so like I was really good at like forming circles of people around each other and building circles and connecting people together. And really that became the thing I was really good at was working with engineers and talking to engineers and building circles of people and circles of expertise. And so I got to the very end of my Purdue University, my 5 years at Purdue, and I was like, I do not want to be an engineer. No one wants me to engineer anything. No one should trust a bridge or a car that I designed. You want me to do something else. And Malachi, do you know what they call an engineer who graduates with a 2.0000 GPA?
No, I don't.
They call him an engineer. You get an engineering degree. It's really amazing. I would point at it here. It used to be on my wall, but it's not there anymore. They call you an engineer. You may have met all the minimum requirements, barely, but you did it.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't want to engineer things. I knew I have an engineering brain, but I don't have the attention to detail that an engineer requires. And so I was looking around, I was trying to decide what to do, and I was applying for traditional engineering jobs to find something. And my wife was going to grad school in Cincinnati, and so I started applying for jobs in Cincinnati, and I applied to this little company I'd never heard of in an industry I did not want to work in. And I applied, I talked, and I just met these two guys that were brilliant. Tom and Dave just had such passion and energy for automation and manufacturing. These two guys like literally changed my life. They changed the trajectory of all of it. And when I got done with my interview, it was hilarious. I interviewed at Balluff. I know it was right around Halloween. It was either right on Halloween or a day before or day after Halloween, because Balluff every year has a Halloween costume contest inside the building. And when I walked into, remind you, I'm a boy that grew up in Chicago. I'm going to Kentucky to do a job interview, and a boy from Chicago going to Kentucky to do a job interview. You're a little bit like concerned. You've never been to Kentucky in your life. You're like, what am I walking into? And when I walked into the front lobby, I kid you not, there was a lady with all these like jagged teeth, like sticking out everywhere. She's got like crazy, like gray, wavy hair. She's wearing the weirdest, like ripped off, torn, shredded shirt I've ever seen. I'm like, where am I in Kentucky? Where am I? It was the costume contest day. She was dressed up like a witch. She had fake teeth in and her hair all done crazy. And of course she won first prize, but like that was like, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? It was really cool. So like I fell in love with this. The people there were really incredible. And so I joined Balluff right out of school, more or less. I did IT call center work for a while. It was terrible. No one should be like, that job is horrible. Hey, my computer's broke. My computer's frozen. Can you help me over the phone? Like solve it. That's, if you ever want to torture somebody, that is the way to do it. You don't do anything else except for put them in a call center and try to help people troubleshoot computers over the telephone. That is really brutal. But I joined Balluff and I was a sales trainee basically before they had that program. And my job was to follow Dave around, learn what he's doing, and then deliver on the promises Dave made to customers. And Dave was an expert in metal stamping, still is an expert in metal stamping. Dave Bird, metal stamping and welding and automation around the press shop and in the fabricator, in the metal fabrication shop. And Dave had the most incredible mind for knowledge and specs and applications and language of the people. Dave was able to relate to virtually anybody. And I learned a lot about how a sales process works. I learned a lot about how to talk about technology in a way that people want to care about it. And I learned so much from him. And then I also got to work with Tom Rosenberg. And Tom Rosenberg did it another way. He was very much an expert in assembly, and I would call it cleaner automation applications, and general automation kind of applications, seating and kind of like the interiors part of automotive automation. And I learned a totally different way of selling from Tom, equally valid both of these ways. But I learned so much. I saw between traveling with these guys, like I would go with Dave for a week, I'd come back and work on stuff for Dave. And then I'd go with Tom for a week, I'd come back and I'd work on stuff for Tom. And like we did that for a number of years. And I saw how a tree was turned into a 2x4. I saw how a car was made. I was inside the Tesla factory when it was the old, NUMMI plant, when it was dark and it didn't look like it does today. It's a beautiful place now. I've seen how ice cream is made. I've seen so many amazing things that we make in manufacturing, and it's just made me even more passionate.
That exposure to all the different things. If you can land a job where you like, it don't matter what the job is, whether it's sales. I mean, sales is definitely a good one for it. But like just gaining that exposure to all these different manufacturing facilities, like that's one thing this past like year, I've started going back to doing much more on-site because we were trying to save a lot of time with, let's just do virtual meetings, right? If we think it's a very valid RFQ, then we'll go on site. Well, now it's like just every virtual meeting, let's get an introduction. Let's understand a little bit about their processes, and let's do an on-site anyway. I don't care how interested they are, right? Because like there's so much value in like going and seeing their operations, seeing their current automation if they have it, and after you get the inside view, you can really understand like what their automation and processes look like, so you can better help in the future.
And I'm amazed by the number of times we come to talk to somebody about one thing, and then after we walk the floor, we end up talking about something entirely different because the conversation started with this. But as we're walking the floor, it's like, oh, what's that? Why are you doing that? What is going on here? Oh, yeah, we hate that. We don't know how to solve that. Are you kidding? I can solve that with $200.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, like it totally like changes the dynamic of what's going on. And I agree that the in-person virtual is nice, but really bringing an expert on your floor to see how you're doing things, why you're doing things, there's a lot of value in bringing somebody into your shop to talk.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another perfect example. This literally just happened like yesterday. So we got sent 2 RFQs for 2 robotic cells, and we looked through them, we quoted them, and we end up going on site, right? And we go on site and we get there and we're looking at the two different projects. Well, you can't tell from the RFQ document, like geographically where any of the stuff's at. Well, it just so happened to be that one cell's right here, the other cell's right here. They're sitting right next to each other, okay? And they're running a fairly slow cycle time, like 17 seconds or something like that. Okay. And so now one of the things that we've proposed to them is, why not handle this with 2 robots? Like literally the only other, or I mean, why not handle this with 1 robot, right? You're putting 2 robotic cells in here.
Do something over there.
Yeah.
Do something over here. Do something over here. Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, robotic idle time, if you can reduce the idle time, that just increases the return on investment, right? So, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean,
you never would have known that if you hadn't stood right there, right? I mean, like, it really, there's some things that only have value when you stand and see it. Like, I remember when I saw ice cream being made, the dude was like, it was July. Bring your winter coat, bring your winter hat, bring your winter gloves, bring all that stuff. And I was like, it's July. He's like, bring all that stuff. So I show up for the call. I'm in the lobby, and he's like, "Where's your coat? Where's your hat? Where's your gloves?" I'm like, "They're in the car." He's like, "Go get your coat. Go get your hat. Go get your gloves." I was like, "Okay." So I got all that stuff. I'm like sweating to death. I got it on, and then we go inside, and I realized the entire production is minus 40.
Holy cow! Holy cow!
Yeah. I'm so glad I had that coat and that hat and that gloves.
Absolutely. What was that like? I have not been into an ice cream shop yet.
Really cool. I mean, like really, I mean, it's all process, right? Like it's liquid. It's not minus 40 in the whole place. There's like a less frozen, I don't know, like minus 32 or whatever, or 0 degrees Celsius. There's but it's liquid and it goes into containers. It's very like processed. It's like filling cans or whatever. Yeah. And then it freezes, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like, I mean, like every time I've ever been to a food plant and they've been like, "Here, you want to try it off the line?" That ruins that food forever for me, because like fresh off the line, there's nothing like eating something like right off the line. That is incredible. So,
absolutely. So whenever you started with Balif, were they already a pretty large company at that point?
Yeah, definitely. Balif was a big worldwide company, established in many countries. I hadn't ever thought about manufacturing. I definitely never like thought about automation in manufacturing. I'd never really thought of that before. And I think that's disappointing because it's so cool, but I had just never been exposed to it. And the things I was exposed to were never really like exposing me to it. So to be honest, when it was like, "You're going to go to manufacturing," I was like, I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
Like I liked the people, but the like industry.
Yeah.
It took a little bit, but it didn't take long. I mean, the first time you go to an automotive body shop and you see like 30 robots all move at the same time, or the first time you take a tour of like Toyota TMMK is not that far down the road here. They make a Toyota Camry every 50 seconds, Malachi. We've been talking for 23 minutes. They've made 25, 26 Toyota Camrys, 27 Toyota Camrys while we've been talking.
Right.
Like that's incredible. They make a Ford F-150 not that far from where you are in Louisville. They make a Ford F-150 like every minute and 50 seconds.
Yep.
Minute 42 or something.
It's mind blowing. Like even today, like I'm 10 years into my career and it's all been automation, right? That's what I've been doing my entire career. And I literally walk into plants today and I'm just mind blown and baffled by just like seeing the motion of robotics, like servo controls, like just all the different processes that you see. And like I think I'd seen one of the first times I've seen friction welding firsthand. Yesterday. Like, that's so cool.
I've seen that at a trade show. I've never actually seen it in production, but I've seen it at a trade show. Cool. That's neat. You got to see that.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. And so it's like so wild. And also, like you mentioned before, like being able to see all of the different ways things are made. And like one facility may make the grill of the vehicle. You know, the Toyota plants is doing like the BIW lines where they're welding all of the skeleton together. And so like each one of these places, you're just seeing like some neat aspect and a lot of times a completely different process, right? Like your injection molding companies are completely different from your seat frame welding companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, it's incredible all the possible things that are made in the U.S. I mean, like, you know, there's a lot of reshoring going on. There's a lot of things coming back, but like, I'm still just blown away. We make a lot of stuff here, and we make a lot of cool things here. And I mean, most of the food that you eat was in a plant here in the United States somewhere, right? I mean, like Kroger, based here in Cincinnati, they're one of the largest food producers in the world. Incredible. Like I remember I visited a pasta sauce factory. And they were running, you know, basil and I don't remember, tomato basil pasta sauce. And I was in that plant all day helping solve a sensor application. And I got out of there and I called my wife. I was like, we're having spaghetti for dinner. And she's like, I already planned something. I'm like, I do not care. And I drove straight to Kroger and I bought the sauce, and I bought the noodles, and I made spaghetti and meatballs that night because I was like, I have been smelling this absolutely delicious tomato basil sauce for like 6 hours. I am eating tomato basil sauce.
If it's the same plant that I'm thinking about, I think for that brand they make all the tomato sauce or all the spaghetti sauce out of that one facility for the entire United States.
Yep, yes they do. I mean, I will say a cheese plant, anything with dairy is a little bit overwhelming. You wear all the hair nets and all the, like the beard nets. You and I have to have a beard net. I mean, you got all of that stuff, but it is cool to see how that stuff's made. Like there's one plant in California that makes like some ridiculous percentage, 90 or 92% of the mozzarella consumed on the planet.
Wow.
Is made in like this one factory in California. It's like absolutely mind blowing. And you would think it's in Italy somewhere, right? But no, it's in this plant in California. And like, it was so incredible to see how those processes happen. And so that's why like, we have to share more about that. Like if you work in a place like that, how do we work with the company to not show trade secrets or whatever, but how do we share it in a way that makes it exciting as a career for those that aren't in manufacturing? I mean, we should what we do is amazing.
Yeah.
And we gotta share it more. We gotta evangelize it more because we make cool stuff. We make stuff. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think people just need more exposure. So that's like the biggest thing that I see is just the gap in like not seeing it young enough and also just like not getting more of a total exposure to, I think if you can see automation especially or see an actual manufacturing process, like those things can become exciting and really, really spark interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a local action. I think this is something I talk about a lot, Malachi. Like, I can make videos for YouTube. I can make videos for Instagram or TikTok, and they get seen by some people. But that's still something just online. Like, you have to engage the local schools. You have to engage the local programs. You've got to, if you have a factory and I guarantee there's an elementary school down the street. I guarantee there's a middle school somewhere nearby. Get those kids in for a tour. What you do is cool, even if you don't think it is. It is cool, and they see it, and that is something they find interesting. I was on a tour with like 250 kids at a trade school where they were kind of interested in the machining. They were kind of interested in the HVAC training. When we got to the welding lab, and all the students were running a weld. They were laying out some beads. They were welding parts. They were doing plasma cutting metal parts out so that they could weld them together. I mean, like, these middle schoolers and high schoolers were like totally enamored. They were like, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that. Like, that is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Really piqued their interest and got them fired up and ready to get involved.
And they never considered welding before that day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that like there's a lot of schools that don't do enough. The school side and the manufacturer side that don't do enough. Interaction with doing field trips to facilities like that. I mean, I would think there should be like 5, 6 field trips. I mean, you should. I mean, in my opinion, like it'd almost be worth having a weekly field trip or a monthly field trip to like some facility somewhere, whether it's not manufacturing too. If somehow you could like just go to all these different job types, right, and be able to
visit the local hospital and learn about the jobs there. Visit places and see what they're doing. I'm really impressed. There's a local chain here. It's called Gold Star. It's Gold Star Chili. They make burgers and shakes, and then they have Cincinnati style chili. They also own the Tom and Chi brand, which some people know from like Shark Tank, but it's like a grilled cheese and tomato soup brand. But they bring kids in from high school and like internships for business internships, so they can learn what it's like to run a business and how running a business works. And so like you don't even necessarily have to have them in your weld shop as a 16-year-old. You can have them in other parts of your business.
Yeah.
And you can have them involved in what you're doing. So it's about opening the doors and exposing more kids to what we're doing. And it only happens locally. Like manufacturers, you have to open your doors to the school down the street. That's the only way this gets better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the social media part of it definitely has a level of impact. And I think that it's definitely something that was missing because one big thing that I could see a lot of teachers doing into the future is like, hey, look at this YouTube video talking about this thing that like was never really an option, right? Like, especially industry specific. And because there's so many different aspects too. You have your sales, you have your mechanical engineers, your electrical engineers, and like there's just now becoming like YouTube channels that are like openly just giving away like all this information for people to be able to learn from and be able to show in their classes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's people like Tim Wilborn, right? Like on his channel, you can learn how to code a PLC watching enough TW controls videos.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a bunch of others just like them that are sharing and really making it available for people to enter the industry and to do cool things, really. And I'm so excited about the number of new companies that are out there. I really think it's great for manufacturing. It felt like for a while, if you weren't a 100-year-old company, you weren't established yet. And now there's a lot of new brands, there's a lot of new people, there's a lot of new energy in manufacturing. And I find it really invigorating and exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Diving back into kind of the start of your career with Balluff and running around doing sales. One, I'm personally just very interested in it because even at this stage of my career, it's one aspect that I truly wish that I had. And I probably would never do it, but it's almost something that I would say, okay, company, I'm going to leave for a little bit of time. Y'all keep operating without me. I'm going to go like run around with some sales guys and like to see like how they do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, really that part of the career was really interesting. I wasn't directly like managing accounts, but I was doing like industry level sales or strategic level sales. So I was learning to be the expert in a subject. Sure. Like I learned a lot about metal stamping and welding. Like I do a lot of work with the PMA now, the Precision Metal Forming Association, about how do we add automation to the metal stamping and the presses. I'm amazed. I always ask in presentations with the conference, you raise your hand. How many of you have a machine on your floor right now making parts from before World War II?
A lot.
Like half the people will raise their hand, right? Yeah, half the people will raise their hand. And so usually those machines have like a crank for setting the shut height, and they have a go and stop button, and that's most of the automation. And so I'm not telling them they need to go and like bulldoze their factory and buy all new equipment at the next Fab Tech. That's not what I'm telling them. But how can we systematically add automation to something that's a good product. It will add productivity, it will add safety, it will add a lot of value, quality to your organization, flexibility, visibility. It's going to add all these things to your production when you update and retrofit and add to it. So for me, what I really learned talking, especially when I was product manager for our network products, because Ballup was always a sensor company. And then partway through my time at Ballup, we came out with networking devices. So, IO devices and these kinds of things. And so we had never sold them before. And so I really had to go and listen to customers. I had to ask them questions. And what I realized was the most powerful sales guys ask questions and listen. And inexperienced sales guys talk. And when I was working with really good salespeople, when I was working with really, really effective and successful and salespeople that really helped their customers, they would ask good questions about the business and how they could help the business. They would only propose solutions that they had that would actually solve that problem. And if they didn't have a good solution for that problem, they would even recommend a competitor or a similar technology that would be the best solution for that problem.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to be the advisor. They didn't want to just be a salesman. They wanted to be that company's advisor. And so if that meant that this one opportunity doesn't fit me, but I'm going to help you find a solution for it, that just means you're going to help me the next time. I'm going to ask you for help next time because you help me find the right partner.
Yeah, it builds that rapport.
Yeah, totally. So I think, even in this digital age, even in all the social media and the kind of virtual meetings and things we talked about, I think that people still buy from people. How we make our connections can be various and hybrid and virtual and in person, but you want to buy from somebody or a company you trust. And so making those connections and having those conversations is still an important part of what we do. And so you like people that listen to you and really understand what you're saying and are actually interested in helping you, not people that are interested in helping themselves, right? And that's true in business or in personal life. Like, you don't surround yourself with people that are selfish. You surround yourself with people that care about you. And so that is really something that that I learned in sales and really helped in just life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for now, right now, I'm spending a lot of my education time on the sales side of things because somebody's sharpened for myself and for our company. And something's like very much becoming like an awakening. Definitely, like you said, like adding value and helping them solve their solution. That's been a huge one. And then another one that I've found has been very big is over the past 3 months, my mind just kind of has expanded exponentially on addressing their concerns about something, right? Why is there anything about this that you think it's not going to be successful? Or is there any concern that you may have? And that opens up the ability to one, I think not enough people ask that question.
Oh, yeah.
So now you've opened up this question that most people have not asked. And then now you can talk about something. It's like you're opening the door and making it okay to talk about a thing that you really didn't want to talk about. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think there's a book. I don't particularly care for the name of the book because it sounds kind of sleazy, but it's called Spin Selling. And the idea behind spin selling is how you ask questions matter, and the order you ask questions matter, and the style of questions you ask matter. About building trust between you, about you really understanding what the customer's problem is. And so if you follow this spin selling philosophy that I've really embraced and found interesting, the idea behind it is, how do you get to really what the need is? Because a lot of times people tell you, I need a robot to weld some parts. Okay. Why do you need a robot to weld some parts? What's the problem that this robot is solving for you? You aren't getting good enough quality. What happens when you don't have good enough quality? Oh, your customer charges you to pay someone to sit in your factory and inspect every part one at a time? Oh yeah, that sucks. Okay, so what does that cost you? Like the ability to kind of have the conversation to understand for the customer, oh, this is costing me $400,000 a month. Yeah, automating this is a big deal. Or it's not costing us anything. Okay, well, then maybe that's not really a pain. Because a lot of times, all of us are this way, even in our personal lives. We tell people something that's bothering us. And a lot of times, it's not actually the thing that's bothering us.
Yeah, it's a deeper thing. Yeah.
And so what I really love about spin selling is it's about getting to what the actual needs are, what the actual problems are, not just the stated initial problems, but what are the actual problems of the company? What is the value that company connects to those problems? And you're much more successful selling a solution when you can understand and connect your solution to those pains with value.
101%. And this one right here is definitely a personal one, and I'll try to tie it back to manufacturing as good as I can. But I'm listening to Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone. And a reason why that one's very powerful for me is because I'm slightly introverted, and definitely when it comes to like the objection side of things, I'm just like, okay, you know what I mean? And so the point with that is like, I may have the solution. I may be the better vendor or supplier or company to do this service for them. But sell or be sold, they're essentially selling me that we're not. You know what I mean? And if I'm just gonna say, okay, cool, whatever, like then essentially we at that point you almost don't win the project. You're not able to provide them your solution. You're not able to supply them as a vendor, which means now somebody else is, and they may not be treating them as well. They may not have as good a service as you. They may install the system and just leave and not come back. And
it's important to know your value proposition. What are the things that you're bringing to the table that are different than your competitors, and being able to explain those clearly and to be able to attach value to those things. If I'm providing 24-hour service, that has value versus someone who's only going to provide 8 to 5 service. And so talking about that and talking about what we do differently and the value that it has for others. I mean, one of the reasons I came to UR is the amazing ability to get customers to talk about case studies and testimonials about the value it created for them. Not only the value it created financially, but also the human return on investment, the internal capital, the getting rid of the stress, or getting rid of the physical pain part of the job, or whatever it is. If you can connect your solution to that person's personal objectives as well, that's also really important. Like, how is that person compensated?
Yeah.
What are their goals that their manager put on them? Because their goals that their manager put on them might be, I need to reduce every contract by 25% or I can't sign it. So that guy's being an asshole, not because he wants to be an asshole, but because he has a personal goal that his bonus money is tied to that says he must reduce every contract by 25%. So, I mean, you don't know. That's why questioning and that's why I really like the idea of spin selling. It's about like, what are their needs, not only the needs of the business, but the needs of the person. And what are the motivations of those people, so that you make sure the solution you tie, you're helping them. You're not causing them heartache in their personal objectives or the objectives their boss has given them. You know how to present yourself in a way that solves their personal problems. I guess not all their personal problems, but you're going to solve their problems, their personal problems at work, as well as their company's problems. And that, if you can link your solution to that, that's a total win.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And one thing where I see this for us personally is we essentially on our account side of our company have payment terms that our customer has to meet those payment terms, or we are also not willing / able to do the work for them, right? Because we have our own business goals as well. And if you want to give us net 90 payment terms, 90% at the end of the project, like, that's not very, good for our side of the business. So one of the things that I've seen with that is like, how can we get creative? Like, this is what your company, how they structure their payment terms. They have to be net 60. How can we get creative in a way where, okay, it's still net 60. We can't change that part of it, but what can we change to make it palatable for everybody?
Yeah, there's a really great negotiation training that I took years and years and years ago. I wish I could remember the guy's name, Bill something. But he talks a lot about yielding and shielding. And so everything, I mean, to him, everything's a negotiation. There's anything is negotiable. I'm a little bit less believing in that, but in business, for sure, you're negotiating on all kinds of things. How much time you have for a meeting to, negotiating on an actual contract. And so being very clear and upfront on the things that you're willing to yield and the things you're unwilling to yield, the things that you have to shield. He always talks about yields and shields. What are the things that you have to hold on to for your business, or for you to feel like you got a good deal out of it? And what are the things they need to shield and yield? And so trying to understand their situation as well as understanding your situation and trying to find some way to a common point is a really, negotiation is an interesting topic. And if you're working with big companies, big company buyers are trained very extensively in negotiation skills. So just like a salesperson's trained extensively in selling, a big company buyer is trained extensively in negotiation and buying skills. And so you have to be prepared to play on their level. And that's definitely, that can be challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. We see it a lot in any of the projects that are over $250,000. That's where like hard negotiation starts coming into play, and start that the negotiation skill sets really start to break out.
Definitely. And the thing is you wouldn't be at the table if they didn't like you. And so it's really, you have to remember that, like, here's your opportunity to talk to them and really understand them better than your competitors.
Yeah, I agree. Diving back into your career a little bit, because I think we're definitely dropping valuable bombs, but I want to learn more about you. I want people to know a little bit more about you and some more how your career trajectorized.
Yeah, I mean, so I've worked in product management. I mean, I did the kind of strategic selling, the segment selling, the industry selling for a while, and supporting those guys. I did food and beverage, I did metals, I did assembly, automotive, packaging. I mean, you name it, timber processing, energy, mobile equipment. I've done industry management on a number of industries. But then I've also done product management in a number of cases, and that's a very different skill set, right? Like, automation cables. I used to have a friend, he used to say, it's just a cable, Will, but automation cables are actually probably one of the more complex parts of a job sometimes, because you can't stretch a cable. And, they have a molded connector on one end and possibly a molded connector on the other end. And if you're short by 100 millimeters, you're short by 100 millimeters. And so there's a lot of variation in that. And so, like, if you've ever pulled a Valve data sheet, I hand typed every single characteristic of that cable into each cable, like 12,000 parts, 200 characteristics. I hand typed them into our database system. Minus 20C to 70C and 240 volts AC rating, or whatever it is that it's 300 volts AC rated, most of the cables. I mean, like, I hand typed those into the database. So did a lot of like writing specifications and how are these cables made, and quality inspections, and how do they need to be checked to make sure they meet requirements, working with customers when there are quality issues. And so all those things that product management, what do we need next in the portfolio, and how do we develop partners or vendors or engineering to do those, or production. And then I did for the last, 6-7 years of Valve, I did a lot of marketing and communications management. So how do you position your company appropriately at trade shows or on the website or Google Ads or social media or whatever it is. I worked a lot managing marketing programs and marketing initiatives and campaigns. So I've managed teams up to 26 down to just individual contributor and everything in between. I really found it rewarding. For many years, I worked with co-op students, and I hired co-op students out of the local schools. And co-op students are amazing, absolutely amazing. They are passionate and interested and energized. And yes, you have to educate them. But if you put some work into it, I had a really good system. I had 6 co-ops in one of my departments, and we were making trade show demos. Every demo you see at Balluff, up until even now, are built by co-op students. Every demo at Balluff was built by a co-op student in the US. And I had 2 students, it was their first rotation. I'd have 2 students, 2 to 3 students, that was their second co-op rotation. And then 1 or 2 students, that was their third, fourth, fifth rotation. And I actually built a program where we had standard training for these kids to bring them on, these students to bring them on. And then they trained each other and helped each other. And that was the expectation. And so in your first co-op, you're trying to figure out how to use a drill and a soldering iron. And by the end, you're programming Siemens PLC logic and working with little Mechademic robots. And you're really learning automation. And I think if I look back on my whole career, the things that I enjoyed most was working with the students and the co-ops. That was really incredible. That was such great work. They inspired me. Hopefully I inspired them. And we also had a sales trainee program, and I always had 2 trainees in that group as well. And so those were people learning the business before they went out into full-time positions. And so the combination of the trainees and the co-op students, it was really fun to educate other people, energize other people, and they're at the beginning of their career and share how awesome manufacturing was. I loved that part of my career a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of one of the most rewarding things is being able to, influence people who are young in their career to make some type of shift, just be educated. Like it's overall a really cool process.
Absolutely.
Whenever, one of the things that when I first noticed Balluff and ever even heard of them was whenever they made the shift to IO-Link. So whenever they started to release their IO-Link product, that's when I got my first exposure to Balluff.
That was my baby, and I'm glad it's awesome to hear you say, because that was exactly my goal. I mean, not to toot my own horn too much, but between me and a couple of colleagues, really just a couple of us, we made IO-Link for the market. Really, I'm very dead serious. IO-Link was not going to be a thing. And I went out with a colleague, John Harmon. He was my boss at the time, and eventually a really close colleague. And he and I worked very diligently on what could this do for manufacturers? And the more we talked to customers and interviewed people, the more we realized how much value it could create for people. And so we systematically put together sales trainings and sales tools. We systematically put together targeted marketing and campaigns and marketing activities around it. And then we actively promoted the heck out of it at in-person events and trade shows, and then went around and really tried to understand. The reason IO-Link was successful, Malachi, I'm 100% guarantee it, is I interviewed hundreds of customers. I would talk to them. What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? Why do you think this would work? Why do you think this wouldn't work? Why, if they did buy it, why did you buy it? What are you doing? And I had so many interviews, and so many great people opened up and shared with me what they were thinking and how it helped their business. And we took that information and we taught it to the salespeople. We taught it to the next customer. We taught it to each other. And that really made IO-Link a thing. And I think the core part of that, if I boil it all down, is we listened to the customer. We listened to the customer. I mean, it sounds obvious, right? Yes, of course you should listen to the customer, but you'd be amazed how many companies never talk to their customer or never listen to their customer.
Yeah.
But we really, John and I, did hundreds of interviews.
Yeah. And especially if
I got thrown out a lot of places.
Really. And I think especially with your like analyzing it, right? Like not only are you asking the questions, but you're intentionally like documenting the questions. You're, walking away and not just forgetting about the information that you've gathered, but you're actually keeping that information and then spreading it across your team.
And the trick is knowing your audience. Like even inside of a small company, the owner has different objectives than the controls engineer, has different objectives than the assembler. They have different things they care about.
Yeah.
They have different things that motivate them. They have different things that they're interested in doing. Just like at a factory, the plant manager has different things that motivate them versus things that the line supervisor has versus the maintenance manager versus the maintenance guy versus the operator. They all have different objectives. And the trick about why IO-Link was so successful is we had targeted, specific, different messages for each of those audiences. If you were a owner or a head of a machine builder, you got a certain set of messages. If you were a controls engineer and a machine builder, you got a very different set of messages. If you were a plant manager at a factory, you got a third set of messages. And if you were a maintenance manager or a maintenance tech or an engineer at a plant, you got a fourth set of messages. And we had a lot of different things. The technology was exactly the same. The solution was exactly the same. But the questions you asked in spin selling were different. The proposals and values you tied those to were different because everyone has different motivations. And so if we can listen to customers and understand what they're motivated by, we have to change our language by what motivates them, not by what we want to sell.
What do you think or could you give examples of some of the different messages as far as like if you're talking to like the owner versus talking to the engineer?
Yeah, totally. So like one that just blew me away one day. I was interviewing a machine building owner, and I had a lot of conversations with controls engineers at machine builders, but I hadn't really met, this is a long time ago now, more than 10 years ago, but I hadn't really met too many like owners of the companies, right? I was a young guy in my 20s. I was meeting with controls engineers. I didn't meet too many owners. And we went out to lunch, and like right as we were leaving, the owner was like, "Where are you guys going? What are you doing?" And they were like, "We're going to lunch. He's buying." Ha 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 ha. And I was like, yeah, I'm buying. And he's like, "I'm coming with." And I didn't even know who he was. He wasn't part of our meeting, nothing. And so we're out having lunch, and I'm down at the same end of the table as this guy, and they're kind of a different conversation. He was like, "So why are you here? What do you do?" And so I was kind of explaining IO-Link a little bit, and none of my arguments for controls engineers were like, he was like, "I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I don't care about that." And I was like, "Oh, shit." You're a machine builder, though. You should care about these things, but he doesn't care about those things. And I would talk to controls engineers about how easy it was to like upload parameters. So once you built a machine once, if you're building the same machine or the same part of a machine, right? Even if you build custom equipment, you don't make it from scratch each time. You have some base things that you do similar each time. And so you can steal pieces of code from previous projects, or you can, you always have kind of like a library of stuff. And so one of the powers of IO-Link for a controls engineer is you can save parameters and you can save some of these things and then use them in future projects. And so I was talking about that, and he didn't care. But when I was talking a little bit about some of the other things that it could do, he was like, "Wait a minute." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "So what you're telling me is I could shorten how much time it takes for me to build a machine?" And I said, "Yeah, definitely. We have case studies that shorten the time to build like 15 to 30 to 40%. And he's like, "Shut up." And I was like, "Okay, so you care about that. That's cool." And he's like, "This is why I care about it." And he was really kind to like share with me why he cared about it. And this blew wide open conversations with machine builders. And what he said to me was, with the same people, with the same floor space, not having to buy another building, nothing. I can grow my business. I can accept 30% more orders with the same people and the same building. I don't have to expand my floor space. I don't have to hire anybody. I can grow my business without having to increase my bottom line. And I was like, duh, that's a huge value.
Yeah.
And the solution is the same. The ability for controls engineers to repiece things together, and the ability for line builders to just screw things together instead of having to build an electrical cabinet. Like,
yeah,
I was saying the same solution.
Yeah.
But I was saying it in a totally different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like another. I can see now that you say that, like another scenario would be like you can provide a better system to your customer, right? You don't have to tell them all the jazz about all the extra data that it gives you to be able to work with, but you can now, deploy a smarter system to your customer. Yeah, I can see that. Okay.
Yeah, and so we built messages specifically for that machine builder. We called it the profit and loss guy. Who's the guy that cares about the money? The controls engineer. They say they do, but they don't actually.
Yeah. Unless they have some type of bonus tied to
right. Yeah, for sure.
the project.
There's somebody, I mean, I'm sure in your position, there's someone who cares about every penny. And that does matter. And so it matters differently to someone who's in charge of it than someone whose bonus is tied to it.
Yeah, 101%. 101%.
So, I mean, no one cares about your business as much as you do, right? And so the arguments to you are going to be different than the arguments to them. I mean, you were talking about terms and negotiating on terms. If you can ship machines faster, then you have a lot more opportunity to fill your pipeline, and so then maybe you can carry some other projects or something. You can carry long terms on one project because you're turning enough fast enough that it'll work out in the end. But there's things that you can do when you have those kinds of values. So there's so much to think about in selling and sales and marketing, and it all comes back to asking good questions and doing good listening, right? It all comes back to being a good listener and asking good questions. Good sales and marketing people aren't talkers, although I've talked for an hour now. They're good listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think listening is a huge asset to have, like no matter what your position is. Like I remember, like for myself, probably for at least like 2 years, I had smart things to say, but I just didn't say them. I would just sit there and listen and listen and listen and listen until I got to a point where I was like, okay, I definitively know now. I would ask questions. I would say, oh, why are we doing it like this way? Why are we doing stuff like that? And, I'd ask questions, but I really didn't have much input. And then, so like just being quiet and listening for a couple of years, like really built that. That's whenever I got the audacity to speak up in meetings and be like, okay, guys, this is dumb. We shouldn't do this. You know what I mean? And this goes like, so like I spent a lot of times as a controls engineer. And so like a lot of that would be like, okay, cool. The device costs $1,000 extra. Buy it. It makes more sense. My worst controls project was with IO-Link. And it was because the upper management said, we need you to use Allen Bradley master blocks with Balluff IO blocks. That thing, all the blocks had to be written to with like implicit messaging, instruction blocks, and I'm like, guys, it's been like 2 weeks to like write all those instruction blocks and get all the parameters set right, and like.
That no comment, but yes, I'm not surprised hearing that story is what I will say.
So it was listening that gave that audacity of things, and ultimately, side note, one, I actually eventually want to write a book called The Audacity to Start a Company, and it's revolved around a lot of these things here. It's like the listening and the then being able to speak up in a meeting, and then speaking up and somebody not listening, and then, things don't go the right way. And then somebody looks at you and says, yeah, you're probably right on that. And, I think that it could have never happened without listening, right? It all started with listening, learning, just having a deeper understanding of what's going on, why people are doing things in a certain direction. Also, I guess thinking of things and like the why are we doing something in a certain way while you're listening and really analyzing things. Awesome. Will, what last valuable points do you have to add back to the community?
Man, yeah, I think I guess, I mean, looking back on 17 years, I think just being curious, asking your questions. I mean, I'm amazed the number of times that I've been in a meeting and someone's used an acronym or something and no one says anything, and I'll be like, what is that? I have no idea what that is. And you'd be amazed the number of people in the room are like, yeah, I don't know either. But you've got to, be the first one to speak up. It's really, if you don't understand, ask. Like, people are talking because they're trying to communicate to you. Communication's bi-directional, right? If you don't understand, then it was not communication.
Yep. Absolutely.
So you really got to make sure that you're actually talking to people, you're actually listening to people, and you're really engaging. I think so many of us listen but don't actually communicate or don't engage with the communication process. You are an active participant in communication. And I think when you become an active participant in communication, really amazing things can happen.
Absolutely. I like to add one thing. It kind of ties into that, and being humble. I think a lot of people won't ask the question. One, because insecurity as well. So you're either insecure and you don't want to look dumb, or you're not being humble and you don't want to look dumb because of your ego. So I think those are also important points.
I mean, I look dumb to begin with, so I have no trouble asking dumb questions. Self-deprecation, that's my kind of humor. So
well, I definitely enjoyed having you on today. I think we could probably make that a 3-hour podcast if we wanted to.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you at? Where can people find you at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in all the places. LinkedIn's my main spot for Will Healy. Don't look for Will Healy Jr. You'll get my dad. You'll get a lot of content about watering plants. It's much more complex than turning on the water, apparently. But yeah, you look for Will Healy III. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm also on most of the socials. On Reddit, most of them I'm on there as Will Automate. Reddit, TikTok, Twitter. I just started an Instagram account. I'm blown away by the amount of manufacturing on Instagram. It's really cool. So yeah, I mean, all those places. I'd give you my email address, but I think we started off saying I don't read email. So that's probably not very helpful. Best place is LinkedIn. Send me a DM. My cell phone's there too. You could text me. Those are all good ways. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. I appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks so much, Malachi. It was super fun. Thanks for the conversation.
Likewise.